Yesterday really felt like spring. Today, not so much. But this is our April City of Bend Utilities Public Advisory Group meeting. Thank you, everybody, for rejoining us once again. I'm Aubrey, Dan, and Elizabeth in the conference room are both our key speakers today. So we've got a little bit of water conservation in store, and we've got a little bit of stormwater management focusing on outreach for illicit discharges. So that's our meeting plan. It should be fun. A couple of places that we'll be looking for feedback. One thing that I wanted to note in our agenda packet that we sent out, we included a couple of things. So there's the CECL certification program that's upcoming, an opportunity if folks are interested in May, and that's going to be happening in Bend. So if you have somebody that you know who needs or wants to take advantage of that training, or if you yourself do, just wanted to note that we'd sent out the flyer for that program. And Elizabeth can probably share more information if you're interested. We also included in the agenda packet some of the materials that Dan has been putting together related to the turf removal pilot program, and then also the WaterWise Communities program, and that's the HOA grant program. So those are two things that we're going to talk about today, but just wanted to mention there's some resources in the agenda packet too that have more details on both. And before we move into that set of material, also wanted to just take a second and share some reflections, some takeaways. We're trying to develop a nice concise list of highlights from the past meeting, and anybody who wants to add to this, please do. But we talked about the Stormwater Master Plan, collected a lot of input from the group on areas of interest and key considerations that would be great to have the team think about and to have more discussion on as we move through that process, which will carry forward throughout this year. We also talked about the water conservation program reporting and the annual report, kind of the metrics to use and things that might be most compelling to community members to help convey the benefits of changing some household habits. And then we talked a bit about upcoming erosion control compliance and some of the big changes that are in store to prepare for that. Anybody in the room, I guess, want to add, particularly the Stormwater Master Plan? I think hopefully that feels like a good list. Austin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just put a little plug or expansion on that. Thanks a bunch for the recap. Just a reminder, we're going to be coming back next month, spending, I think it's like 45 minutes we have of this next meeting kind of carved out to get into a little bit of conversation about stormwater issues throughout the city before we try to create that spin-off group, both for the master plan feedback and then some work that Elizabeth has with some of the permitting. So we're actually going to meet again today, prepare some, I guess, content ahead of the meeting just to kind of pose some questions. But yeah, just a reminder, if any issues stormwater wise around the city, be great to start thinking about that ahead of next month's meeting.
And I don't want to fast forward too quick if anybody wants to add on to that, but Austin also brought up our summer subcommittee meeting. So if you didn't remember that you volunteered, here's a quick reminder. We had a nice group raise their hands, and there'll be more details about this as we get closer to the time frame. The UPAG as a full group does not meet in July and August. We like to let folks get out and enjoy the sun when kids and so forth are out of school. So this would be a subcommittee, but we take generally the same approach. So it would be probably 2 meetings, an hour and a half-ish each. And the 2 topics would be the Stormwater Master Plan as well as erosion control standards and kind of applying that concept to smaller lots. And I had Mike, Rick, Brian, Tom, and Stephanie had all expressed interest in being part of that subcommittee.
Do we have dates for those 2 meetings by chance? Or are we going to tackle that in the future?
We could probably pin it down more closely in the future, but we're trying to kind of keep to the same general
rhythm.
Yeah, to make it hopefully easier for your schedule. If that sounds good, Mike.
It sounds good. What is the rhythm? I don't know. I just follow my calendar,
First Wednesday of the month.
First Wednesday of the month.
Usual,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Good. Well, I didn't hear anybody opt out, so that's fantastic. This will be a nice group to have in the room. Another piece of our annual calendar is a June tour. So we've had a hybrid meeting format for a bit here so that folks can gather and connect in person, but we also like to have sort of a capstone meeting in terms of our spring series and get out and walk around and talk and discuss, see things in action. So the idea that the team has been talking about is a Newport Avenue Stormwater tour and meeting in Drake Park. We keep to the same time frame, so 11 to 12:30 is our official space, but we also bring lunch and folks can hang around for a bit afterwards and chat and socialize if you want to stick around. So we'll have more RSVP information on that upcoming, but want to also just get that on folks' calendars. It's not there's no presentation. It's really kind of, get out and walk and talk and enjoy each other's company. And that's June, the June meeting. And I know some of you were with us this last year when we did a tour as well. So that was a bring it back and let's do more of it if we can. So we're going to shoot for that. That's all the upfront content that we have. So Dan, if you want to kick off the storm or the water conservation section.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Morning, everybody. So just to recap, we're going to share a little bit about our turf removal programs, 2 new programs we've got rolling out this summer. But to recap kind of some of our previous talks, I think Lori's February meeting, she mentioned kind of like the state of the water and our water system and some of the challenges that, in addition to being tasked with implementing our WMCP, we've got goals set now for what our reductions are, what we're working towards. But, some of the continued challenges that just keep piling up on us, with water rights, with growing regulation on some contaminants in water. We just got off a dry run of a presentation with the master gardeners we're going to give and had this great drought outlook map that just gave, from 2001 to 2025, the concentrated amount of drought that we've had here in Deschutes County and how that's kind of affected things, people's attitudes, et cetera. So just keeping in mind that these are all the things that we're kind of, that are driving our efforts and influencing some of the decisions of like why we reprioritized looking at turf removal instead of some of our other measures for this year. So next slide, please. So in our analysis back in like 2019, 2020, it's kind of a blur now, but I went back and looked at some of the numbers or the assumptions that we were using in that analysis of why we were choosing to include certain measures in our program. And turf removal, it ranked a little bit lower in priority initially. Usually turf rebates are pretty expensive on the utility side. You have to offer something enticing to get people to take action, and but you can't necessarily control who's applying, right? So there might not be as much water savings at this property as you wish, right? Given that, it came down lower on the priority list. But when we were looking at landscape code and turf removal together, both of them referenced the same studies, the same potential savings for implementation. But some of the numbers we used have changed. So you'll notice, the projected savings in million gallons per day is a little bit higher on the landscape code side, but essentially the amount of savings that they were using per account was the same study. So they were still saying that 26% savings at a single family residential site with landscape code or with turf removal. Some of the things that have shifted, and this has influenced like our timeline of rolling these out, is we're seeing big shifts in development, and we kind of talked about that before. And so as you guys know, we've started working on our right-of-way landscape code. That's still on the schedule. It looks like we're going to get that like late spring, early summer. We'll go to council and the planning commission on that, and so that will be implemented. We're thinking at the soonest, probably like late fall, early winter. The next step and the original piece of that was we were supposed to go into private side development. Based off of what we're seeing, just the animal that is going to be to tackle, and with the shift in development being more multifamily centered, we decided that moving to the retroactive turf removal coupled with the right-of-way might be enough for us to start with this year. It's certainly a lot to start in 1 year, but I think from what we're seeing in past pilot programs, I think we're going to be in a good place with that. So I just wanted to share, and if you notice, like the gallons per day per account is pretty similar. 184 for turf removal, 187 for the landscape code. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to achieve pretty close to the same amount of savings with adequate education and everything else that goes along with these programs. Next slide, please. Any questions on that before I move on real quick? No?
Dan, let me just add one thing. So the turf removal program is coming sooner than we had originally discussed.
Correct.
That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yep.
I don't think you're going to get any pushback from our leadership whatsoever on that. I think everybody's excited to have that as an opportunity, and they've kind of just been waiting for that program to come up. So I'd be interested to hear if anybody from this group has any real reservations with us, taking steps towards that or expediting that. I don't think you're looking for a ton of feedback here, Dan, but I don't think you're going to get any pushback whatsoever from leadership. You're going to get all thumbs up and asked, how many resources do you need to make this happen?
Okay.
Is this only for customers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So our big constraint right now is we're limited to water customers only because this is funded through water rates.
Water rates. Okay.
I'm talking about the rights conversation too long. But we're talking with, and not making great progress, but we are talking with some of our franchisees, the Avion Roads folks, about opportunities to offer. And certainly anytime an Avion customer calls us, we tell them, we'll give them a call. Tell them City of Bend's got this program and what do you have to offer? So through a little public pressure and maybe some collaboration, we'll get there.
And to Mike's point, is it may be an opposite of opposition. It could be support, and that this could be billed as an introduction to what's coming for the code conservation. So a way to get the message out that this is a concerted effort, this is a multi-phased effort or multi-approached. I mean, you're doing everything you can, really looking at all those solutions, and this is one that pays up front, right? So the code enforcement is, well, you're going to pay if you don't follow the code.
Yeah.
But this is more of a, no, we're starting with the carrot, trying to roll this out in a concerted method.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully, best intentions of leadership.
A great way to roll it out. And Dan, just back to the franchisees, I think, Dan and I have, clear direction from our leadership to figure out how to make these programs really accessible for our franchisees. We don't regulate Avion roads. We can't tell them what to do. We can't tell them to take on additional costs, but we can make it really, really compelling and really easy to plug into our programs. And that's really kind of how we're trying to approach these things, but we're also, prioritizing our customers first too. Yeah. Okay.
So I saw some head nods when you asked the question of, how does the turf removal program sound? Does anybody online want to add on to that? Or I just saw some kind of body language of thumbs up that it's, appropriate to bring that forward.
Well, I'll add on to it. I mean, I have no comments on it, but I think it's great. I guess my thought was, as a landscape architect, I've actually been contacted by a couple of HOAs that are asking for some design guidelines to help promote the removal of turf and transition back to native landscape. So I was wondering if that would be an opportunity for Dan and his group to maybe reach out to some HOAs and put on seminars. I've told them about the rebate program, and they were all surprised and excited. So that might be an avenue to get the word out, is meet actually with HOAs and set up, events or educational seminars with specifically those HOAs to tell their neighborhood community about these programs. I think that could boost your participants.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. We've thought about kind of like a roadshow opportunity. If your neighborhood's interested, especially because the conversation keeps coming up with there's a lot of CC&Rs in neighborhoods that won't allow anything but turf.
Right.
And so that's a sticking point, kind of a hurdle we're not able to get over directly, or like we can't supersede those agreements. But what we do offer and can offer is we can show up to those board meetings and advocate and give, you know, the reasons why, and some of the return on investment stuff. Depends on your board, you know, kind of where they're sitting, but
from what I've
Yeah,
noticed, I think the fear is, you know, what does it mean to remove turf and replace it with native landscape? And they don't. Everybody has a different vision in their mind of what that looks like. Some people think it's just dirt with a couple twigs and boulders, you know, and some people think it's a nice lush landscape of native bunch grasses. So what the HOAs want is consistency, right? Which is why they're calling us to write guidelines so that everybody does it. It's at least a similar look that, you know, is consistent when they drive down the street. So, yeah, I think it's always education, right? So, but they're all interested in it. Everyone wants a lower water bill, put it that way, and to be more responsible. Yeah.
To your point, Mike, like there's so many variables in these projects. I mean, a lot of them, especially when you know, you don't have experience in those areas. I mean, we're trying to learn from a lot of mistakes, you know, made in other programs that have attempted this, and I've seen personally like results that I'm just like, man, this looked a lot better as turf, right? Or that went sideways somewhere, and so what is that support that we need to bring along with just having the program? So those are the things that we'll talk a little bit about here, because there was a lot that went into this to try to mitigate these things going sideways, or people, as soon as you get one of them that people drive by and be like, oh man, that looks horrible, right? It's hard, because then that's stuck in everybody's mind of like, well, that doesn't work, and xeriscaping doesn't work in Bend, and it doesn't matter what the detail or that place where it went wrong, where there's lack of maintenance, or where it was, you know, something from the installation that didn't go in correctly. There's a lot there. So part of the question I have for everybody today is, you know, we're going to throw out some ideas about, you know, what can we do from having like templates that just show the DIYer, hey, it can go in like this, right? To the education pieces directed at certain customers, to more broad, you know, like event style education seminars and workshops and things where people get a little more hands-on with it. But that's one of the questions I have for you here at the end. It's like, how can we brainstorm our way through this collaboration-wise?
Yeah, how does this look for multiple account customers? I mean,
we'll get to that, yeah.
Okay.
So Aubrey, I think we're moving ahead in the discussion, so let's go through a couple slides. So you guys may remember this. So this is our shift. This is our new building forecast through 2045. So you can see the blue on the left are kind of our current practice of development to where we're headed. So that big shift to 74% multifamily and only 18% single family versus where we're at now, closer to 60 of single family. So this is part of our reasoning behind thinking through some of our reprioritization.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a huge shift.
Yeah. So it's different conservation problems there. Like, you know, we need sub-meters, we need, you know, all sorts of things to tackle, like 200, 300 unit multifamily plexes. It's not going to be that big lawn area so much anymore.
So Dan, these numbers jive with the growth management group.
This is their numbers.
Yeah. And so that's the group that's been sort of tracking the statewide legislation on climate-friendly and equitable communities that applies to communities over 50,000 people. So that's why we're going to be a little bit of an anomaly here in Central Oregon as we go through this. But essentially, we got to draw some circles on a map in Bend, basically, where we're going to have really, really high density pockets of density, right, of housing. And so we're really, really going to start to urbanize, like, you know, portions of Portland, you know, like I've heard Alberta Street, you know, no comparison for like Galveston in the future, things like that. So, wow, that's quite a change over a short period of time for a city. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
It's a little startling.
And then the middle one is just, you know, that percentage of the UGB that, is going to be in franchisee territory versus the city of Bend, right? So we see a lot of that growth happening in Avion and Rotes, or not Rotes so much, but probably Avion territory, right? So then we're looking at that going, okay, well, does that private development code get us what we want? If we're only developing, 27% are going to be city of Bend customers. So looking at all those different things. Next slide, please, Aubrey.
So in that case, the benefit goes to the franchisees. Dan, you and your
Right.
program are doing a whole lot of work to reduce turf for utilities that aren't connected to the city's water system. That's kind of the conflict there.
Yeah.
Not a total loss, but
We're a super
not
great
exactly.
collaborator.
Yeah, not exactly what we're looking for. Okay, I got you.
But yeah, to Mike's point though, they're actually really supportive of our right-of-way code because that's going to help them out quite a bit. I mean, they've got a lot of the same issues with just, that outdoor water use peak and how they're dealing with that. So the first one we wanted to look at, this is going to be our single family residential. So this is for folks 1,000 square feet and less, or projects 1,000 square feet or less. They're going to get $3 a square foot. So a maximum of $3,000 towards the project. Per our pilot back in 2022, that was roughly around 50% of project costs. So we were seeing $6 to $12 depending on per square foot project cost, depending on what extent, whether it was just plants and mulch, softscape, or whether they included hardscape features in that. But we're also looking to inform ourselves of is this the right price point going forward? Is it better to start out high, get people interested, and back off a little bit once you get buy-in, or where are we? So that's one of the things we're going to be looking at. Some of the requirements, and this comes down to, the issue of, well, now you go and you demo this yard and you've got bare land. What are the things that happen? You get weeds, if you're not, doing weed abatement. So what are the things that we can kind of prevent those heat island effects, weed intrusion, all those negative side effects that you see with what they're calling xeriscapes, right, where there's no irrigation. We are bringing back the term xeriscape because there's a difference, and there's one that's holistic and considers everything, and there's one that I think is a big misconception for here in Oregon, which is xeriscape, where they tell people just throw in rock and plants, water it for a year, and then you're good. Well, we're real arid, we have dry soils, things desiccate, you get weeds, so there's lots of examples of what we don't want to do. So our requirements, and Mike helped us on our right-of-way code, was what's the appropriate plant density, right, to offset some of that radiated heat. If they go in with rock mulches, what is a good density or dense enough crop to outcompete some of the weeds that might want to move in, so we can reduce the amount of herbicide that gets used, where we don't want to just have these rockscapes where people are out there with Roundup every week. So we tried to put some of the parameters around this program to think of all those things. And then there's side benefits of if you want to include pollinators or go all native or what have you. You have different levels of kind of design that you can pursue. So we're just asking for anything to be moderate water use plants down to very low. Again, the pilot numbers, we've got a goal to remove, based off our budget, about, what is that, half an acre, approximately, a little bit more of turf through this program this summer. We've got 35 people on our interest list. So I think we're gonna be able to get through that no problem. Some of the other things we're requiring, they've got to convert to high efficiency irrigation. The big one is we're asking for no mixed hydro zones, which when you're converting a turf strip, or a street strip that may be connected to your front yard, that can be a little expensive, right? Because that's either finding another zone, boring under the sidewalk, or installing a brand new zone to separate those hydro zones. But we're staying firm on that, because we want to be able to manage water appropriately to the different parts of the landscape. And we don't want to, we feel like we're putting out a decent amount of money for this program, and we don't want to leave something kind of half-baked, right? That didn't really fix a problem that's, you know, should have been handled at the start of the installation. Next slide, please, Aubrey. So some of the considerations, again, you know, the weed potential, minimizing herbicide use, the need to update low-performing irrigation systems. We have a tree requirement. Not that you have to add any additional trees, we welcome that, but you cannot remove any trees through this. And you have to maintain the health. So giving them dedicated irrigation, whether that be, you know, inline drip rings or bubblers specific to them, we want the trees to have adequate water. That was a big issue with a lot of other programs down in the Southwest, was they were just, you know, land scraping and maybe you got a couple drip emitters out to the trees. So we're creating kind of a drip matrix so that people can be able to calibrate, you know, if it's one drip zone, how much water needs to go to the tree and what type of emitters to use to get water to the shrubs. Again, promoting plant diversity, right? So trying to expand the list and resources of plants that we can direct people to. So, you know, Carl Foresters just doesn't go everywhere. They're great, but right, we want to see a mix of plants. We want to see healthy plants. And then providing support. So we will have mandatory, so when we get an application, we ask for a sketch of their project. So we know at least they thought through it a little bit. So we want to see like, where are your plants going? What are the dimensions of your project area? Where is your point of connection? What type of irrigation you're using? We're going to get varying levels of drawings and design skill, but all we want really is to know that, be able to catch things that aren't going to qualify, first off. And then secondly, make sure that they thought through the whole process and they kind of know what they're getting into. And then once we receive that, we set up a mandatory pre-inspection. We're calling them a consultation, but we'll go out and verify square footages, that there's actually living turf there that they're taking out, and answer any questions for them. And then a post-inspection just to verify square footages again and help them with any scheduling of the new irrigation, because that can be a challenge. Any questions on this one? Okay. One of the other things that we're working on here soon is we're going to be working with OSU, our fire inspectors, and hopefully Mike or and any contractors that are interested in kind of talking about how to blend the WaterWise regulations into this. That's a tough one. So that's forthcoming. But other than that, I think we could move to the next slide, please, Aubrey. So this next version is something that we're going to try to fill our commercial sector. We don't have a commercial specific program yet. So this will be for HOAs, any commercial customer, parks, schools, commercial buildings. It's a variation of that same program, but with this one, it's grant administered. So they apply just like they did for the turf removal. They get 50% reimbursement of project costs up to $10,000. So we're not doing like a per square foot, but projects that are covered would be turf removal, irrigation efficiency upgrades, anything like water management, you know, central control systems, flow sensors, anything like that that would either increase the management capability of the water or improve efficiency, or if they just want to do a conversion. That's all covered. With this, we're going to manage it through our existing large landscape program because we go out and do site evaluations for these customers anyway. And during that could be used as kind of, you know, the project scoping time of walking through the program with those customers and then getting that pre-data of like, what is our return on investment for those customers? Our goal is 8 sites. That's typically what we're managing during the summer with these customers now, but they're they can vary from, you know, broken top HOA to a school to a small park and ride. I mean, so there's lots of scale in here of who we're dealing with. But if you're doing the turf conversion, it's a lot of the same requirements. We're not going to cover decks or hardscape. You can do permeable pavers, as long as they're not mortared in, as long as your plant requirements are still met. So if you want to incorporate, you know, pathways and things like that with permeable pavers, you can, as long as you're still meeting your plant density requirements. Next slide, please, Aubrey. So we are, one difference in this, so there's you're going to apply, you're going to set up our evaluation, and then if everything looks good, we'll sign a grant agreement. It's a reimbursement upon completion. There's some basic requirements of just, hey, you have to have all the paperwork completed, but we're going to offer priority points to your application. So if you incorporate things like hiring a WaterSense certified designer or contractor, you get a priority point on your application. If you're including stormwater or water capture on site into your design, you get a priority point. The use of pollinators, if you include a maintenance plan of how you're going to take care of the new landscape, that's a priority point. That's a big pitfall, is like a lot of times we take on these great projects and then we don't follow through on the maintenance. So someone who has a thought out maintenance plan of like, here's what we're going to do for irrigation maintenance and plant maintenance for this new design, we want to encourage that. But yeah, any questions on this one? No? Okay. And this is something, you know, again, we're working on the MOUs with our large partners, and we're hoping this is a way to help them with any of the projects that we identify through those MOUs to make those changes. As well as a lot of our interest has been from HOAs in this large landscape program over the last couple of years, and we haven't really had anything to help them in the past. So this is something that hopefully fills that gap.
Hey, Dan, just kind of thinking through some of these things. So like a real world scenario, I mean, some of the HOAs that, you know, Mike said are approaching him, you know, have these big swaths of turf. I mean, it's going to be 10,000 square feet. It's going to be pretty small, right? In some points. So, I mean, do they have to already be a part of the large landscape program to take advantage of this sooner, you know, or can they kind of raise their hand and say, hey, we might be a really good candidate as an HOA to kind of make a big transition here? Like, how should they interact with you?
Yeah, so definitely, you know, contacting us with interest is the first step. We're going to facilitate the evaluation or that pre-consult through the large landscape program.
Okay.
So we're going to do our typical large landscape evaluation of the irrigation and the landscape.
So that's kind of their entry point into that program.
Exactly.
And then you're eligible for this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Dan, does that step cost money? I just want to be prepared with, you know, with the info, or is that
evaluation? So yeah, we're trying to do
yeah.
low barrier. So this would just be our existing offering, which is no cost. You know, one of the things we've thought on, you know, for the residential is maybe contracting out with some designers, so that, you know, as part of the program, if they apply and they have no idea what they want to do, you know, having limited funds to get some designers on board to talk to these customers. And again, just helping provide a better product in the end, give them some guidance. But for these, with the WaterWise communities, we're really looking for them. I mean, we can help answer some questions and maybe help prioritize something based off the evaluation, but we're really looking for them to work with their landscapers and their board and their whoever else they have on board with them to come up with their project.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the large landscape program evaluation. Is
Yep.
that there's no cost to that first step?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Great.
Yeah, I'd say there's no cost, right, or anything like that, but there is, you know, some limitations on capacity.
Right.
I mean, we can only take in so many customers. That's why you're limiting it to roughly 8.
Right.
So I'd say, yeah, if you have HOAs that are really interested and it's April already, probably speak up sooner rather than later.
That's a good point, Mike. So one thing, so our only limitation right now is obviously budget that we've allocated towards this and in our time, right? So that's where we came up with the 8 projects that we're going to try to tackle this year. The other piece of this, and we're going to change it after the pilot, is we're looking for 90 days from pre-approval to completion, right? You can have a 30-day extension if you're running into issues, but what we're trying to do is we need to have that. We don't want things to run through the winter, right? We're looking for a growing season for this pilot year. So it's 120 days maximum for your project. We want to be able to get things done and complete and that irrigation blown out by October. What we're thinking of changing though is actually taking the applications in like November and December. So advertising, hey, we're accepting applications. We can review the applications with the customer, and then those projects are more likely to be shovel ready in April, right?
Yeah, I think that would help your participation a lot as well, because 90 or 120 days sounds like a lot, but in this town,
It goes quick.
Landscapers are booked 6 to 12 months in advance, so sometimes it takes you that full 90 days just to even get somebody to return your phone call, to be honest.
So these are projects of, that quite possibly could be evaluations or customers we worked with in previous years, that are now see this opportunity. We've already kind of identified projects. We've had a few HOAs call. Aubrey Butte actually was one that is interested. So there's a few folks that are ready. We'll see if they're actually ready to break ground this summer, but we'll find that out. Any other questions?
Working in the right of way would be a permitted process too, wouldn't it?
So our current rules are, if you're working in the right of way, you need to be a certified contractor. If the homeowner does it, they can do it themselves. Kind of like backflows. But yeah, so we're working with our building people to see, because there's not many folks on that list right now, to see if that's how we can get people back on that list, or what's going to happen to that list long term.
That would be interesting. We were on that list. We are not now.
Yeah.
There was a glitch due to the bonding. We're a public entity. We shouldn't have had to, we're covered same insurance. We shouldn't have had to been bonded. So we have been dropped off of that list right now.
Yeah. I think we were up to like 7 or 8 contractors. There's 3 on there right now, 3 landscapers. So
if we could streamline the process, that would really help.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, is define like, okay, who's reviewing that, who's enforcing that, how do we get people on there, right? If we want people to participate, we gotta, I think, make that a little more clear for folks. Okay, next slide. How are we doing on time, Aubrey?
I know you've got maybe a little bit left. We could probably go for another 8 minutes or so.
Perfect. I'll burn through these real quick. So again, we know that there's these projects are big undertakings, so we're trying to offer as many resources and educational opportunities as we can. So we've basically dedicating all our outreach this summer to these projects. So we just finished a series of 3 webinars, mainly our residential customers, but we had 400 folks attend across those 3. So there is some interest there. We have the Master Gardener Spring Seminar coming up on, I believe it's the 13th, on a Saturday. We're going to present on this if anybody's interested or wants to pass that along. I believe Amy Jo is doing a WaterWise gardening presentation at Deschutes Library on the 17th. And then we have our in-person event on June 8th. And so that one, we actually have committed designers that are going to show up and do some mini consults for folks, have offered some of their time for that one. And then we'll talk about, how the pieces of that project all get put together. Additional needs, again, we're pursuing that FireWise alignment And then just, the basic topics again, like irrigation, water management. Like, it's great, we're changing plant material, but we can still overwater that. So again, that's, I think, gonna be homeowner and contractor based. So kind of filling those needs. One that was brought up was integrated pest management. Actually, we just put our utility site landscape contract out for bid and found that there was like one person out of all the bidders who had the certification. So that tells me there's a huge need for that. And then, yeah, I mean, what you were talking about, the turf's gone, now what do we do? Right? That's the easy part, is taking out the turf. Yeah, what are the next steps, right? How do we build that landscape? And then the contractor certification program, this is something that we continually are bringing up. Most of this is irrigation focused, but if we're gonna have opportunities or requirements for certified, WaterSense certified contractors, we need to make sure people are getting those certifications. Again, at least they're familiar with the content. Doesn't mean they're perfect, but at least they're familiar with the content. So when the homeowners speak to them, everybody's speaking the same language, right? And then Bronwyn, I know we had talked about maybe collaboration with our teams for some of this too, which would be fantastic.
That would be great because
Okay. So more to come.
Okay.
I'll let you know if we got anything planned, but I think that's something that we're hearing from the industry is a need, which is great. If they're speaking up and saying like, we want to learn more about this, I think that's an opportunity for us. And yeah, I mean, lots of misconceptions about herbicide use too, right? But yeah, any questions for me? Otherwise, I think I'm about done. All right.
What are you doing during the month of May, Dan? It looks like things are kind of slow.
I'm taking it off.
All right. That's pretty amazing. Nice work.
We can fill it with something.
No, it'll be busy, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh,
Right.
sorry.
You
I wasn't
got
done.
another one.
So our priorities, because we are going to ask you questions here at the end. So program outreach. Things we're focusing on now, obviously, are in discussions we've had here, communicating our goals and our current state, just as, conservation, water and bend, our rules and regulations, and then, program specific things, process, installation, care, establishment, and, communication that continues to increase participation in these programs. And then partnerships, some of those things I just listed. It would be great if anybody has ideas or opportunities. We'd love to partner with you and getting the word out on any of this green industry or homeowner training. And then another piece of this is identifying those customers that, we are not engaging or who don't typically participate. Again, trying to identify underserved folks or just people that are busy and aren't aware of our programs, always continuing to drive that awareness piece. I think that's it, right?
Yeah, I think we just had an opportunity to collect any more thoughts here. Kind of, if anybody did page through the application and the promotional material for these two programs, or given the considerations, kind of the steps and the process that Dan outlined, if anybody wants to chime in on, something that they think, great, that sounds good. You might consider this too, or here's a way to help get that information out and into the hands of folks who would be likely to be interested, want to be part of that goal of 25,000 square foot acres of turf removed, or 8 sites in the WaterWise communities. So any thoughts from the team?
I don't have any thoughts on that, but I do have one question for Dan, and I apologize, I haven't thumbed through the application, but the 1,000 square feet that's referenced a few times in that presentation, that's strictly for multifamily, right? And commercial, like, in other words, a single family home. residence is not excluded because they have 3,000 feet of lawn. I mean, granted, I understand that they'll only get, there's a high end or maximum, limit to what they'll be reimbursed for, but if they have 3,000 square feet of lawn, they can participate, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So we're
Okay.
the distinguishing line there is we're only going to rebate up to the 1,000 square foot of
Up
that.
to the, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then, for the WaterWise communities, we're looking for projects 1,000 feet more, which most commercial sites are going to take place. Now I will say if the multifamily plex does have a small little landscape and they would like, under that 1,000 square foot, and they would like to participate, we could find a way for them to work underneath the single family residential program.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
And this will be different as far as reimbursement. So we're actually we work this winter to be able to write them checks directly. So that helps us, get the reimbursement into the hands of, the property manager, whoever it needs to go to, the owner, that's not necessarily a credit on your water bill account, which was troublesome for some of our participants.
Stephanie, I know you.
Oh, go for it.
Tom, it's you. Please.
Okay, a few things that came to mind. I didn't hear, maybe I missed it. I did read through the application that it's substantial, it's lengthy. I mean, you're gathering a lot of data. It might be something to look in the future at as you refine the program, if there's a way to refine the hurdle of the application, because I suspect the people who will fill it out are going to be the ones that attend city council meetings and know that there's a certain amount of effort that you have to go to be that first participant. But it's a lot of information, and that was just the initial impression. All of it good. You can see the value of it, and collecting it certainly up front. One hurdle on the participation would be the rental group, those that rent. How does that translate for the owner of the property to the rent? Is there, and I'm sure you're thinking of it too, but having an answer to that up front, or having more of a consideration towards, so you own property and you'd like for your renters to do this maintenance, what thoughts are there? And then lastly, I didn't see a stick on if it doesn't work in 2 years and it all goes to pot.
Yeah.
What are the mechanisms? Is it a return of the funds, or is it something? I mean,
So
the tricky bit.
So it's a 5-year. You must keep it in place and maintain it for 5 years, or reimburse the funds.
Okay.
And we talked about this with legal, like, well, how does that actually work?
I know.
Is that us knocking on the door?
Boots on the ground.
And so that part's still being worked out.
Okay.
I didn't get a clear answer on who's actually going to be showing up asking for that money.
Well, and all the better that the pilot group that's going into this really will be the people that are really bought in as Bend as a greater community, and you're a citizen of involvement. And so they're going to be the test case to see, well, how would you suggest? And working with that group, because they're your greatest asset initially, right? Those first participants.
Yeah.
And going through this, because it'll get harder as you go to that next removed level of a renter who's overworked and busy and can't attend to the meetings and the educational opportunities, let alone have time to maintain without Roundup on the softscape. Yeah.
So we're trying to put those checks in there to make them successful, hopefully with like enough. I mean, it's administratively a little bit more of a burden to have all those checks, but I think if it equals that successful project in the end, or something they're happy with and don't want to tear out in a year,
right?
Yeah, hopefully it's worth it. But I know this is like the early adopters that are already gung-ho.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're thinking of like, can we target this program to high water users? Because we're probably going to get better savings with a targeted program versus the people that are just willing to do it. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It also makes me think about like turnover of the property, like if they sell it, what do you do about that? It's making me think about the stormwater maintenance agreements that we have to keep those facilities tied to the property, but I don't know if that would could be an option to keep.
Right. I mean, things we're gonna learn this year for sure.
Yeah.
You're gonna find some new gray area that you didn't know existed,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
through the pilot. I think it's just, you know, good to just kind of remind yourself and everybody of that, and that, you know, give yourself allowance. So at the end of the pilot, you can say, hey, these are the half a dozen things we learned that we need to tweak before we start this program up again, you know, and maybe you do put it on ice for a while until you know, get through some interesting sort of duplex, triplex, rental, you know. Yeah, there's lots of interesting, you know, conversations there of who wants to benefit from a low water landscape, and who pays for it, and where's that money go? But,
Yeah, and that's part of the thing we're trying to address with the check administration versus the water account, because we ran into a lot of, you know, like, how do you get the benefit in the hands of the user or the renter? Because especially like, you know, mobile home parks with one water account, right? It's like, well, how do we administratively handle that? Like, do we say that, well, you have to do X number of units? Do you have to do everybody? You know, when you've got one person in that complex who's trying to apply, and you're trying to go through.
but they don't pay the water bill.
Exactly, right?
Well,
And so
they pay
it through
They pay a
the
portion
account
of it.
holder,
but it's not direct.
right? But they don't see that benefit of the rebate,
Gotcha.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's why we're thinking the direct check payment will alleviate some of that, where these renters and other folks can take advantage of it.
But,
So Mark,
but you might,
Yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry, but you might use that bill payback if someone does sort of fail to maintain. It sounds like you're talking to legal about it, but that doesn't seem like a big obstacle, right? Because it does seem like having that incentive and that long-term performance as a critical part of describing that. And just there's all kinds of on-bill capital investment financing. It seems like if someone wasn't going to pay back directly, it wouldn't be that hard to build it into a bill potentially. But again, I'm just thinking, I know there are a lot of electricity, energy efficiency kinds of investments that operate that way.
Yeah, so we would recoup that on the utility bill as a fee then, is what you're saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Have you heard of Craft 3? Like they do on-bill financing, because with the ECC, we've been looking at how to do some of this kind of incentivizing and subsidizing of investments on energy efficiency investments in Bend, and looking at how you could use a third party for some of that financing if necessary, but also then that there's no reason that you couldn't have those payments structured similar to repay something that didn't meet the requirements. So
Yeah, no, that'd be interesting. I think IPP does their code enforcement fines through, they're like one of the only programs that can do it, but they can actually administer their fines rather than through code enforcement through the utility bill. So yeah, it's probably a way to work that
I
out.
think, Dan, when you're working with legal, I think that's a deep conversation, you know, as far as how we could potentially recover, you know, what's the city's real interest in recovering funds, I think is one thing. But yeah, I think they would definitely want to write any sort of agreement or rebate program, you know, incentive program like that, to allow us the opportunity to, you know, pursue those funds somehow, some way. And throw, like Mark's point, you know, doing that through a structured way, through the bill, you know, would probably be new territory for us. But I think that's probably the most logical way to recover those funds, assuming that we're continuing to provide utility service to them, right? I know there's an interesting angle in there, Elizabeth, about when people move and tying, you know, this to the lien on their property. I know that, you know, down Southwest, and that's how they do it, because people move around too much. And once you take your lawn out, that's it. Nobody's putting it in ever again. Doesn't matter if you sell your house 4 times, and how to make those more permanent. So I don't know that we're there yet, but I think those are the things that we need to start talking to legal about, at least see what we can solve initially going into the pilot, and then probably coming out of the pilot with a few lessons learned. But Mark, did I capture some of what you're getting at?
yeah, thanks. So that's really helpful, because just to be explicit, I don't think anyone's hoping to have to claw that money back. It's just so that it's very clear upfront that there is the expectation and that there is an enforcement mechanism, so that people recognize, and it's a credible threat, that you would lose that incentive if you don't hold up your side of the bargain. So really just making it as providing as much confidence for people that they really do need to follow through as you can.
Good point.
So I was going to shift us into another topic, but I had one clarification question, because one of the one of the feedback items here was potentially application assistance. So the WaterWise field day, Dan, that you mentioned, that maybe this group could help get the word out to community members. Is that an opportunity for somebody to not just come and get a contractor consultation on how they could make it work for their home, but also get the application filled out and kind of do a one-stop shop?
Absolutely, yeah. So our staff will be on there kind of handling a portion of that, the designers, and then we'll have, other vendors, some nurseries, some material handlers, other people out there to talk about, more of the design aspect. But yeah, any application assistance or kind of like process assistance with the program, we'd be there.
Great. Well, we've got about a half hour left in the meeting, and I did want to definitely get into Elizabeth's content here. So let's shift over to the stormwater side. Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
I can just jump right into the first slide. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about illicit discharge today and some new business outreach and certification opportunities that are kind of tied to preventing more illicit discharges in the future. So this map is just a summary of over time, so 2008 to 2024, where we get most of our illicit discharge cases. And most of them are occurring kind of in the downtown area and kind of central core area of town. The ones kind of on the outskirts where you see the number 29 on the right side map, those are actually more related to development. So we've had kind of a whole process we've been working on to better separate some of our data. So sometimes development projects fall under code enforcement illicit discharge cases because they may not have a permit or they've been escalated so high under their permit that it moves to code enforcement. So just a caveat there that we're really working towards separating out actual illicit discharges and keeping them separate from our construction and erosion control enforcement because they're a little different and fall under different programs. But for the most part, all of our true illicit discharges are occurring kind of in that central area of town. And I should mention illicit discharge, also called IDDE, illicit discharge detection and elimination for the program. Those are any discharges to the stormwater system that aren't stormwater. So maybe it's car wash water with a bunch of soap in it. It could be like a car leaking oil. It could be grease from a restaurant. So anything that's not rainwater is an illicit discharge. You can go to the next slide. So then what are the types of violations that we're getting under illicit discharges? So this is from the past 2 calendar years, 2021 to 2023. Over those 2 years, we had 40 cases. And generally looking back to 2008, we get anywhere from 10 to 25-ish cases a year. It varies. But for those 2 years, we had 40. And the ones where we are really seeing the most frequent types of violations are anything related to vehicle kind of leaks, so oil, gasoline, hydraulic fluids, those sort of things, as well as the second highest we see are cooking oil, grease being either disposed of improperly, leading to leaks, or being dumped into drains near the downtown area. And then all the other categories, they're kind of, maybe 1 or 2 cases a year. Okay, so then again, looking at the 2021 to 2023 illicit discharge data, and those are, again, calendar year, not fiscal year. Automotive pollutants made up about 20% of the cases those 2 years, and then restaurant grease made up about 23% for those 2 years. So most of the photos on this slide are restaurant grease, so everything except the one with the car is really improperly disposed. Grease areas and alleys. The one on the lower left is actually a UIC that someone dumped some restaurant oil in and ended up having to be investigated by our code enforcement staff. And then the the one there with the container, that's typically what the grease disposal containers look like downtown. You can tell they get pretty messy. A lot of times restaurant staff will either, hopefully we think unintentionally overfill them or not be paying attention to when they're getting full and they're overfill. We've also had a couple scenarios where the garbage hauling trucks will accidentally hit them when they're removing dumpsters. So we're finding like a lot of these repeated cases in focused areas downtown. And then the vehicle one, we do see that often, parked vehicles that are leaking that can be pretty hard to figure out and contact the owner because they'll be there one day, they'll be gone the next, or maybe they don't even have a license plate. Could also be related to the houseless population, so they're hard to get a hold of or hard to move when there's a problem. But those are really the
interesting side. That top right one is my alley, which is pretty gross.
Gasoline alley.
Yeah, that's behind Wild Rose, right? Yeah, it is.
Yep. Yeah.
That's right. We're in that building, but the maintenance guy cleaned the gutters and the roof, and he said that he got 10 5-gallon buckets of grease out of the gutters on the roof when he was cleaning them out. This was just like in the fall. And so I think it's coming out of the hood, clogging the gutters, and then overflowing into the alley.
Okay, I know
over like 10 years of,
Yeah. Some of the restaurants also connected their, like in that picture, you can see it's connected to the roof as well, the actual grease container, that little pipe coming into it. So I know some of them do connect the roofs directly into those as well, but that's a good point though.
It's crazy.
You're getting clogged.
Yeah.
All right, tell us how this gets better, Elizabeth.
Okay, so what is the city gonna do? What is stormwater program gonna do? So this year we entered a contract with a program called EcoBiz, which is kind of statewide in Oregon. In the little map there, you can see it's mostly focused around the Portland area. There's a few near Salem and Eugene, and then there's actually 5 in already in Bend. So this is like a business outreach and certification process. So kind of like an environmental certification process and program that a business can go through and get certified. And they focus on auto repair and body shops, car washes, and landscapers. So currently you can't get a certification for restaurants. That they're working towards that, and under the agreement we have with them, they're still going to conduct outreach to restaurants for us. So it's a pre-existing program. It's a free program to get certified, but really the city's just bringing them on board to help us with the workload of doing the outreach and getting people involved in the program and working with them on site and going through that process with them. And so some of the things that they look at are hazardous waste management. How are these kinds of businesses storing materials and throwing them away? Air quality and pollution, spill prevention and response, again, waste storage. How are they cleaning things? Where are they putting their wash waters? Purchasing and inventory management. So what are the types of products they're using? Are there more environmentally friendly alternatives that they could be buying instead? How are they recycling things? They go over employee training on all these related procedures, vehicle washing, and then energy, and also some water use, which I think is mainly focused to the landscapers for water conservation. And then a couple of the other agencies that are already using EcoBiz and our partners include Clean Water Services, City of Gresham, City of Portland, and DEQ actually also supports the program and I think partially funds it since it's a free program. And so a lot of people involved. I know for the Bend locations that are already certified, there's a couple of auto think it's auto detailers or car washes, and then I know they also certify public agencies, so BPRD is actually already certified under this.
Good to know.
Yeah. And the city's also planning to certify their new facility at Juniper Ridge, hopefully next year, the following year. You can go to the next slide. So what does this kind of certification process look like with EcoBiz? So they include an initial site visit and walkthrough with the EcoBiz staff, where they're just kind of gathering information, looking at what the business is already doing and kind of taking notes. And then after that, they give them a report with recommendations of things they need to change in order to meet the certification requirements. And then after that, they'll, step away, give the business some time to make those changes. And then a couple months later, they'll come back on site and they'll have a final certification walkthrough with the EcoBiz staff, and they bring a representative from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality with them for that final walkthrough. And all these little, they look like little PDFs here, are just examples of some of their forms that they have and checklists that they walk through with the business when they're doing them. So the ones I just threw on here for spill prevention, some ones related to pesticide use, and they even have one that talks about UIC systems if they have them on site at their business. You can go to the next slide. Okay, and then what are some of the benefits for a business to get certified? So they're gonna, EcoBiz has a whole website where they have that map that was on one of my earlier slides, where you can click through at all of the businesses that are certified, and they have all the businesses' information. So they end up on that website, and the business can provide information to EcoBiz to also put, like when someone clicks their button, whatever they want to advertise for their business through the EcoBiz website. And then they also feature the businesses on their blog and media platforms. Then the EcoBiz logo is something that a certified business can use to help promote themselves as environmentally friendly. They can even put them on things like their business vehicles or uniforms if they wanted to. And then the other benefit, again, is that the certification is totally free to the business. It's valid for 3 years. It is supported by the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. And then the last thing is, if it's if a business doesn't want to get certified, but they're still talking to the EcoBiz staff, they are going to still be providing outreach materials and free resources. So they'll be bringing things like spill kits, even if a business doesn't want to get certified, and providing that education and outreach to them. Next slide. Okay, so what does our timeline look like for this kind of, we're considering it a pilot. So we have a contract with them, but we set up the contract so that if we would like to, it can be extended up to 3 years. So right now we're just in year 1, but we would like to grow this program with them. So from March to May, we're kind of in our project kickoff and planning phase. So working with the EcoBiz staff, giving them those priority locations and types of businesses, and really letting them know where Stormwater wants to focus these efforts. And then after we do that, they start contacting businesses to gauge some interest and let them know about the program. And then over the summer, the staff from EcoBiz will be coming out to Bend, reaching back out to those businesses that were interested in doing site visits, as well as educational outreach to other businesses that they maybe couldn't get a hold of over the phone or virtually. And then hopefully in winter, so kind of end of 2024, but possibly into 2025, doing those final site visits and getting some businesses certified. So our goal for the first year is to get 3 businesses actually certified, but they will be doing outreach to many more than that. That was just our goal for actual certification. Next slide. Okay, and then I guess I could have put this slide before that, but again, about the business outreach, downtown business outreach approach, which is really going to be focused on restaurants, actually right along Gasoline Alley, because that's where we have most of the issues and recurring cases. EcoBiz, like I mentioned, they're going to be going out there and focusing on oil and grease and waste disposal practices, and also spill prevention with restaurant owners and restaurant staff, educating them about the storm system along those alleys, because we've had a couple situations where restaurant staff are disposing liquids into the drains there. So that's the main EcoBiz side of it. And then on the city side, we're looking into some other signage options with both the grease hauler, so the person that owns all those grease containers and services them, to get better signage on those and instructions about how to fill them and not overfill them. And then possibly some more signage on the catchments in that alley, because they kind of blend into the ground. So maybe some more type of thermoplastic we can put around them with signage in a couple languages. And like I mentioned, the businesses for the downtown restaurants, they won't get an EcoBiz certification because they don't offer them to restaurants yet, but they'll still be getting outreach. Next slide. Okay. And then I had a couple focus questions. What ideas do you have to help encourage business participation? What could prevent a business from participating? If you were an auto or landscape business owner, would you find the program valuable to your business?
And I also wondered, Sierra, I think you're on the line. Do you have any familiarity with this from the DEQ perspective, or have you seen this kind of in other parts of the state?
I don't have any perspective from the DEQ side of things, but I did work with EcoBiz when I was with the city of Ashland, and we've gone through it. It's when Elizabeth was talking about public agencies also being certified, it's your fleet. So like your public works fleet can be EcoBiz certified, and they focus on like good housekeeping, which is a part of the stormwater permit that the city of Bend has. So keep that in mind as well while you guys are going through this program.
Awesome, thanks. And I may have cut somebody off in the room. I apologize.
Oh, I was just asking with the blog and the social media. Just thinking about ideas to encourage business. Like, what's the reach on their outreach? Like, if they can help promote businesses, or are they tied to any sort of approved contractor or contractor search, or is it up to us to promote them as EcoBiz?
So they'll promote anyone that's gotten certified with them, but they won't promote anyone that didn't get the certification, because they want to keep it to people that went through the process and got the certification.
Right. So I guess that's on their channels of outreach.
It's on their channels.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we know how many people they reach.
We would be able to do like light promotions about EcoBiz, the program, and loosely highlight a couple of participants, but couldn't endorse programs themselves or businesses themselves because they're doing that. But no, it's good question.
Yeah, I'm not sure what their digital reach is, but I can ask.
Yeah, I'm just, like, landscapers would, if we were promoting, like, look for this certification, or these are eco-business landscapers, I think they'd appreciate that. But I think there's got to be some sort of carrot for them to go
like
through it.
Getting them on the certified contractor list or something.
Right, something, yeah. I mean, that's the struggle we've had. It's like,
well,
what's the benefit of going through the work, right?
Yeah, we've had things like this in our specs for like public projects. And there's just nobody certified in town, that eventually you just have to kind of give up, because you make it so that nobody can bid on the project, for some of these for certifications.
Well, I wonder too, what costs is required. Somebody as a business owner has to carve out time to host an inspection and clean up the house before the parents come in, you know, or whatever it may be to see it. And so there's going to be some effort there, but it's not clear, at least from this, what the benefit would be. What's the cost benefit ratio? You put in so much time, but you do get broadcast on these channels and you are able to jump in and say you're involved in something greater than just your business operations. And so it may not be really tangible yet. Or I don't know if it would become in 3 years, 5 years time when you have some data, how you'd really capture that other than a really lengthy application process and a lot of administration. Because right, that's how you gather the data up front, you monitor regularly. Well, all that takes a lot of time on everybody's hands. So finding a value proposition that says, you're going to invest some time. Our participants so far have had time to prepare for these meetings. They've taken this much time to get ready, whatever it may be. So have an idea of the investment of time or a testimonial from comparable businesses, and then say the benefits aren't cash benefits necessarily up front. They are exposure, and they are you add yourself to a business class of people that are engaged in more than just making money from the public. It's doing some good in the process as well. And so having that message conveyed, I think, would be important, because, you know, what's the barrier? What's the prevention from participating? Not seeing the value, not knowing what the cost will be up front and what the value will be. Even though it's a free program, it's not free if they're frantically trying to stay in business.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that too.
Staff turnover, like if you've got,
staff turnover, yeah, that's a good point.
And kind of keeping them educated and following those processes as well.
Yeah, you'd lose the people that initially were part of the program and had that knowledge. How do you keep that moving forward as a business owner?
Yeah, I think that's just it. Finding out what is the incentive for them to do that, right? Is super important, but also, you know, what happens if they go through their audit and they find out they've got $10,000 worth of repairs they need to make because they're not up to snuff. So there's a certain risk that they're going to have by pulling back the curtain, right? That I think people are probably going to be wanting to avoid.
Would we get involved to help them? Like, you know, so they've got 3 years before they have to get recertified. Would like your program or our program have like interim help, you know, to help like to bridge those gaps of like staff turnover, you know, maybe have like a yearly workshop of like, hey, we're going to talk about, you know, fertilizer, you know, storage or water.
Yeah, I haven't built that into this, but I think they did mention that they check in at a certain frequency with certified people, and you know, they get added to their email list and all of that. I think they did mention they checked in with them. But that's something I can definitely look into.
That might be something if we help like preemptive outreach, like help them maintain that certification, right?
I'll offer up a couple, 2 cents here, but I also wanted to just carve out time for anybody else that's actually on the UPAG to comment publicly. But I echo a lot of what I've already heard, that, you know, businesses are so busy right now, you know, and we're hitting them, you know, as a city, Elizabeth, like we're hitting them on transportation utility fee stuff, we're hitting them on rate increase stuff, and they're experiencing a lot of the same inflationary costs that we're all seeing, you know. So this is, you know, to really, you know, encourage their participation. Like, one, it's got to be easy from the get-go, right? To even explain it to me. So you've got the one pager, maybe a city Ben staffer is there with EcoBiz knocking on the door to kind of like make sure they know it's not just another solicitation. But I think we should look at, you know, incentivizing participation. You know, what does that look like? It's not fair that Dan just gets to pay everybody to participate. I mean, isn't it possible for downtown Bend businesses or maybe groups that are within the MS4 permit area are, you know, eligible for a $250 incentive as long as they participate in the EcoBiz program, you know, every year? Like, I mean, I don't know if there's any sort of regulatory obstacles to, you know, paying people off in the stormwater world, but it's certainly fair game in the water world. And so I think, you know, we should think about that, because we could afford to do that, especially given the pictures you saw. Like that downtown Bend grease issue is sort of like a recurring conversation for Elizabeth and I. the stormwater program and this program's leadership. We get pulled in from the Downtown Bend Business Association and the city manager's office to try and figure out a path forward every year because of turnover and the stuff you guys are talking about. So if there's a way we could like make this program like really effective in that area, like you've already kind of focused on, and get some teeth to it, or some voluntary participation through dollars, like I think that would really, get to the third question of, I would find this more valuable. Hey, Downtown Bend, be a part of the solution to get rid of these ugly grease-filled alleys. Come on, landscape architects downtown, we need you to participate in these programs, right? Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's helpful information.
It's aligned with Clean Water Works, that program that businesses would be able to put up a sticker and be on the website and have some cross promotion with their efforts.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of internal promotion you could do about the program, and people would put 2 and 2 together. Like, oh, all these downtown people are really, getting after this, and that would be the positive benefit. They would see their logos and their stories told to that. It wouldn't be a list of all their businesses and, a thumbs up towards them or anything like that. But some more, a lot of capabilities in the communications group these days to go do that stuff for us.
All right, we've got just about 5 minutes left. If anybody wants to collect their thoughts, feel free, but I am going to just bring up the look ahead here as a quick reminder. So Austin, at the beginning of the meeting, gave a preview of one of the main topics in May, which will be the Stormwater Master Plan. Some more time on that. And then we're also going to bring forward the groundwater protectiveness. There's a report that's been developed, and that's going to be part of our agenda as well. So just to tee that up, that'll be a typical hybrid meeting like we've been doing, first Wednesday, 11 to 12:30, and then look for more on an RSVP for the June tour. And that would be our last kind of spring meeting. We would pause during July and August as a full group, but the subcommittee would meet during those months, and then the full group would kick back into gear in September, the first Wednesday. So just a little bit about our schedule ahead. Any other, comments or notes on the discussion today? And I'm going to also pull up the erosion control workshop here just as one more promo. Any final thoughts?
You might see some of these people at Earth Day, the Earth Day parade and festival on the Earth Day, Saturday after Earth Day, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Whatever day that is, April 22nd, I think, maybe.
Yeah, it's
20th. Okay. Anyway, I think that the stormwater and water conservation groups usually have a pretty good foothold on the corner of Kansas and Wall there, Kansas and Bond, I think it is. And that's a pretty fun time if you're around. So stop by and say hello.
Yeah, and then did anyone have questions about the erosion control workshop? So it's a 2-day workshop. If you only want to attend the first day and not get Cecil certified, it's completely free. It'll be at City Hall. You just need to make sure you register online for the 1 day or the full 2 day. The full 2 day is $200, but you get the Cecil certification. So if anyone has questions, you can let me know.
Pretty tight agenda.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Sounds like everybody feels pretty good. So no more final thoughts. I think that wraps us up for today, and we'll be back in May and look for more on that agenda. So thank you guys. Appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you.